The following video is one in a series on spiritual resilience training, a non-religious view of personal values and their dynamics with others. The contents reflect a variety of principles and practices of systems theory in relational counseling for team building and family resilience. Although the series is intended to support Army Corps values, each video also encourages the viewer to reflect on their current prominent values in specific situations and to consider what values may be more appropriate to means and results that are honorable and helpful with others. Chaplain Dillard initiates creating and posting these videos. Their contents and YouTube's linked videos do not necessarily reflect specific beliefs, practices, requirements, or endorsements of the Department of Defense, its subordinate organizations, or other groups with which Chaplain Dillard is affiliated.
Welcome back. This is the first in a relatively short series on team building and some unusual challenges of decades, distance, and digits. And we may take 3, 4, 5 weeks to do that. The first one we're going to concentrate on today is decades. And there are some challenges to being in any type of group for a long period of time. The first thing we need to recognize is that some dynamics necessarily mean that we will be in a long-term relationship. Family is an easy one. Your mom and dad will always be your mom and dad. Your siblings will always be your siblings. And even if you and your spouse divorce, they're still your ex-spouse, and there are still dynamics that you deal with emotionally and financially and otherwise that can last a lifetime. So some dynamics necessarily lead to long-term relationships, but not just family. Finances, for example. If you are not financially able to move, you may live in the same town all of your life, beside the same neighbors, for good or bad. And that might be a wonderful thing. It might not be such a wonderful thing depending on who your neighbors are. Specialized work. If you have a very particular set of skills, I feel like talking in my Liam Neeson voice, if you have a very particular set of skills in a very specialized field, you may find yourself working for a particular organization or part of the country for decades because that's where the work is, and you're very good at it. And if you're in a good situation, that's great. If you're in not such a good situation, but you've spent years getting a master's degree or other advanced degrees and you've got 20 years of experience, it might be difficult for you to weigh your options and go somewhere else if you're really invested there. So long-term relationships are just a reality depending on some dynamics. Secondly, it's important to note that over time, all of nature, including relationships, tend to seek stability. Habits, we tend not to like change. That doesn't mean that we never seek growth or progression, but we do like predictability. It's just part of human nature. So the more time you're in a family or a organization of work or any other type of group, the more likely you are to get into certain habits, good or bad. You're the leader because you were the leader last year. You're the clown because that's how you introduced yourself in the first few weeks, and people always kind of expect you not to take things too seriously. You've got in the habit of showing up early and working through lunch and staying late. Now that's what people expect. You have gotten some personal gratification of being the one who knows things, who's willing to research things and go the extra mile for the sake of the team, and you've been rewarded for that, or you're stuck with that now. So we develop habits over time, and the second part of that is we tend to avoid conflict. Habits are to create a sense of safety and stability and predictability, and for a similar reason, we tend to avoid conflict. If you are in a family or a work organization or a social team, it seems counterproductive, counterintuitive to bring up a problem because it feels like you're starting a fight, right? If something between you and your spouse didn't go well earlier in the day, most of us are in the habit of overlooking it because we don't want to bring it up and make things worse, or we tend to blast them verbally so that we don't really have to talk about it and work through it. But neither one of those are helpful. They're both conflict avoidance, to blast somebody, because then you never really work through the conflict, or to avoid it. So over a long period of time in family work or other, again, we tend to get stuck in these habits of relationships. If they're healthy habits, that's great. But if they're not, either way, over time, they tend to get more and more entrenched. A third challenge to being in relationships over long periods of time is that our desire for immediate gratification tends to resist long-term goals and difficult changes that can go with it. For example, let's say that that you're in a business, whether that's a commercial business or the military or nonprofit, anything else, and you've got some 20-year goals that are going to require some gradual sacrifice. They're going to require you furthering your education in order to meet those goals in a higher supervisory position, or you're going to run a marathon, or you're going to save up for your son's college, and if we're talking about family, anything else. Long-term goals are often difficult to achieve because our desire for immediate gratification resists those things. And so we tend to have goals to maintain the status quo, or to have the appearance that we've accomplished something, but it's really not dealing with root issues or genuine long-term goals. We tend to achieve busyness that is easier to achieve, but doesn't cost us a whole lot. Therefore, it doesn't bring long-term change. One last challenge that I'll mention here in long-term relationships is that recurring rewards for good or bad behavior tends to reinforce habits and thinking. Notice I said recurring rewards for good or bad behavior. Let's take a real simple example. Why does a toddler pitch a fit? Often because they know that if they pitch the fit long enough, that mom or dad's going to give in and give them that candy that they want. Why does a malingerer at work continue to do the minimum in order to get the maximum? Because they have come to recognize that if they don't pull their weight, somebody else will pick up the weight for them, and it costs more man hours for that supervisor or leader to deal with them as a problem person than it is to address the problem. So they've learned that working the system in negative ways gives them a sense of reward. But even good behaviors can be limiting in long-term relationships. What I mean is that success, past success, can become or translate into, well, this is the way we've always done it. Well, maybe that worked 10 years ago. Maybe that worked when the economy was this way. Maybe that worked when the goals of our organization were that. But this is this year. And the successes of 20 years ago or 10 years ago, and the ways that you achieve those successes may not necessarily be most helpful now. So bad behavior that's rewarded instills habits and thinking, but good behavior that has been rewarded can still limit future progress. Does that make sense? So there are many challenges that go with long-term relationships, but that does not mean they cannot be overcome. That, however, is the subject of next week's video, and I hope you'll be with us.
At the release date of this video, I am stationed with Research Development and Engineering Command, RDECOM, at Aberdeen Proving Ground, Maryland. Because the majority of our personnel are in this area, I spend most of my time here. I do, however, travel to our distant units based on command priorities and budget. I place these videos on YouTube for broad visibility to Army personnel and their families, but I hope the videos will be helpful to others too. If you are assigned to RDECOM and want to request specific topics by video, training on site or by VTC, or confidential counseling on site or by secure webcam, you can contact me at jeffrey.d.dillard.mil@mail.mil.